I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me. I will fight.
Good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly calling town hall and radio show. I'm your host, Jackee Gonzalez, former candidate for Congress in the 4th District, standing in for Senator Chase as she is busy attending to the people's business at the Richmond Capitol. I would like to say thank you to WNTW 820 AM, The Answer, for the opportunity to provide this public service to you each week. Today, Senator Chase is working at the Capitol. As you all know, session is in progress. One more thing about myself, I am a resident of the 11th Senatorial District and a friend of Senator Chase. The 11th District covers all of Amelia and Colonial Heights and most of Chesterfield. Many of the topics that we will address and that are addressed on this show are issues that concern 11th District constituents. And I will also say that if you have a question about today's topic, I invite you to call in. That number is 804-454-1366. Again, that number is 804-454-1366. Well, today we will be discussing the personal parting message of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Dr. Bernard Nathanson was a co-founder of NARAL Pro-Choice America. He was once known as America's abortion king and keeper of the abortion industry keys. I will also update you, our listeners, on an important life-saving bill that I am working on this session, the 20-week Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, HB 1473. And let me tell you what a treat we have today. My guest today is Terry Beatley. Terry Beatley had the rare opportunity to interview Dr. Nathanson, who was battling terminal cancer a year before his death. She made him a promise to share his message with America. Terry Beatley is the president of Hosea Initiative, a nonprofit educational organization which brings healing truth to a broken world by exploring the impact of worldviews. Let me tell you a little bit more about Terry. Terry has been a contributing writer for the Washington Times Power of Prayer supplement, WND, Fairfax Free Citizen, and the Freelance Star. She has also been on radio and been interviewed on podcasts, including WND, Family Research Council's Washington Watch, Dr. Richard Land's Live Show, Steve Dicey Show, Rob Schilling Show, Radio Maria, Culture Shock Radio, The Gospel of Life, and Dominion Radio. Terry has been interviewed for articles in the Catholic Herald newspaper, World Magazine, Virginia Right, and the Washington Post. Terry is a 2015 Worldview graduate of Chuck Colson's Fellows Program, a 2012 graduate of the Jennifer Byler Institute, and former Virginia coordinator for parentalrights.org. She is a former investment broker of 14 years and a retired homeschool mother of 2 daughters. In 1986, she graduated from Virginia Tech with a BS in business. She currently serves on the Virginia Christian Alliance Board of Directors, and she has been married for 30 years to Kenny, and they reside in Virginia. Hi, Terry.
Oh, hey, Jackee.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks
Good.
for having me.
Absolutely. It's really, really a treat for our listeners, because I was just sharing with the host of this show, my helpers here, how knowledgeable you are about the topic that we are talking about today, and how grateful I am that the Lord allowed me to get to meet you and to know you, because you are really, you are a gem. The information that you have needs to get out, and I thank you for being committed to finding out all this information and being a warrior for life here in our Commonwealth. So,
Well, thank you.
oh, absolutely. So, to begin with, Terry, would you introduce our listeners to Dr. Bernard Nathanson and tell us briefly how you met him and why America should learn about his legacy?
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Nathanson, well, actually, let me start off with an analogy. It would be impossible to study about the American Revolution without understanding, at least to a certain degree, who was George Washington or who was Patrick Henry or some of these big names that we know, surrounding the American Revolution. Well, in order to understand how America embraced abortion, where it became the law of the land, the right to kill another human being, you have to understand the history, the legacy of a man by the name of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. So he was known as America's abortion king. He's known as the keeper of the abortion industry keys. And so what I like to say is if you learn the story and the legacy of Dr. Bernard Nathanson, we can unlock what I consider the demonic stronghold the abortion industry has over the United States of America, our courts, our legislatures, it's so much, medicine, healthcare. And so Dr. Nathanson, he was an OBGYN back in the 50s, 60s, well, really until the day he died. And he founded, with two other people, an organization called the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Law. The acronym today is NARAL, or NARAL. Today it's called NARAL, Pro-Choice America. But back in 1968, 69, they had one goal, and they succeeded, because their goal was to get abortion legalized or decriminalized in all 50 states. So Dr. Nathanson basically paved the way for the Roe v. Wade decision, which that decision was handed down January 1973. So he is the father of the modern-day abortion industry in the United States of America.
Wow.
So that's who he was.
Thank you. So how did you meet him, and why should we, of course, you've shared why we should learn his legacy, but how did you meet Dr. Nathanson?
That's a great question, and I certainly didn't set out to meet him. What happened was, after I'd stopped the investment business and I was home, spending most of my time homeschooling my children, a friend of mine invited me to go to the March for Life, and I realized I was sort of ambivalent about the issue. I was never pro-abortion, but I was certainly never a pro-life activist. But I did go to the march, and then it inspired me to begin considering why did we begin to embrace, the killing of unborn children, and how had we overcome, one, basically the Civil War, setting African Americans free because we recognized their humanity, and changed slavery only years later to embrace abortion. So I began to research about Planned Parenthood, what's called Malthusian philosophy, which is a philosophy, a worldview of controlling population. And one thing led to another, and then I discovered this thing called the Negro Project, which was founded by Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, which was a very stealthy population control plan to control the black population in America. And one thing led to another, and I went into a prayer vigil, and quite frankly, I was asking the Lord, what did he want me to do with this head full of information and these experiences I had had with educating people about what Margaret Sanger had done. And the only response I got back was, go and interview Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And I had my Moses moment where I argued with the Lord, told him I'm just a little homeschool mom from Virginia, but he had made it unequivocally clear that I was to go to New York and interview Dr. Nathanson, and that's what happened.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just wondering about this man. Can you share a little bit, before we go into our break, can you kind of touch on what his personality was like? Who was the man, Dr. Bernard Nathanson?
No, that's very important. I include all of this in the book, which I know we'll highlight later on. But Dr. Nathanson was Jewish. He lived in New York City, and he was very well educated. He was also an atheist, so ethnically, I guess you would say he was Jewish, but he was an atheist Jewish doctor, and I think and he did not know what love is. When he was much younger, he came from a very broken family. His mother and father fought like cats and dogs, and he knew how his father he was an adulterer, and how they just abused his mother verbally.
Wow.
So he came from a very, very broken home, didn't understand what love is.
We're about to go on break,
love.
yes.
Okay.
But talk to you later in a few minutes. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome back. Thank you for listening to WNTW 820 AM, The Answer. I am your host, Jackee Gonzalez, sitting in for Senator Chase on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. Well, our guest today is Terry Beatley, president of Hosea Initiative and author of What If We've Been Wrong? Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King. Welcome back, Terry. And I don't know if you had finished out your thoughts before we went to break. If you would like to finish your thoughts on the earlier question on who Dr. Bernard Nathanson as a man was, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think the main things listeners need to know is he's someone that, first off, every American should understand, at least have a basic understanding of who this man is, to better understand what's gone wrong with our country. And then, his Dr. Nathanson's concern was he wanted America to understand how he had fast-tracked a racist population control plan, how he had exploited women and children, and how he implemented what was called the Catholic strategy, which is a political ploy, and then how he had put in place a very aggressive abortion political action organization that's all about destroying parental rights so that parents will not have the right to guide and protect their children in terms of, health care and this whole abortion issue.
Wow. So thank you for that. And so I'm just wondering, and I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering, so, and you touched a little bit on it, but how did you get involved in pro-life research? Did you have people that kind of inspired you other than just what you referred to earlier? And also, can you share with our listeners what Dr. Nathanson's 8-point strategy was? Yes.
Yeah, the first part, and we've sort of covered that, but I just want to say there are a number of great resources out there. And so one of the things that was introduced to me was a video, and you can actually watch this on YouTube. If you want to understand the eugenics, racist population control history of Planned Parenthood, go onto YouTube, and it's in 13 segments. You can watch the video called Maafa 21. That's MAAFA. That's a Swahili word that means great tragedy or great genocide. And so it's Maafa 21, MAAFA. It's a 2.5-hour documentary all about Planned Parenthood's black genocide in America. So, and then there's a book called Grand Illusion. And then, of course, between all this, and then I ended up writing my own book called What If We've Been Wrong? Now, the second part of your question is, what was Dr. Nathanson's strategy, his propaganda campaign to deceive the public? Because the listeners need to understand, this was never a political issue until they basically made it a political issue because of trying to flip the anti-abortion laws state by state by state until they had changed culture enough so that then the Roe v. Wade decision could be basically rammed through the system. So Dr. Nathanson first had to change the thinking of the public, and he did it with an 8-point propaganda campaign. And if you want me to, I can go through real quickly those 8 points.
Yes,
Okay.
and while you're at it, while you're at it, talk a little bit about his warnings in his resignation letter from Nero.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so the first thing he did was he framed the debate around choice. You know, they didn't run around the country promoting the killing of babies in the womb. Obviously, people would not have wanted that. So they simply made it sound like abortion is just a choice. Number two, they marketed the cynical slogans, you know, hey, it's my body, my choice, hands off my body, and all these slogans we hear today. Same ones are being used today. The third one, he used the complicit media. You know, and I think inherently many reporters are lazy. They would rather the information be set right in their lap, and then they go and report on it as opposed to actually researching. So he was an OBGYN, so if he's doing a press conference, he would quote facts and figures and statistics and all this to the reporters. They would take it as truth, run out and report on it. But what they didn't realize was he was feeding them a constant stream of fabricated facts and false polling data. So what were some of the fabricated facts? He would tell the reporters that 1 million women a year are having back alley abortions, and 100,000 women a year are dying of illegal abortion. So it sounded like there were dead women all over this country, up and down every alley in America. And, of course, they would market as coat hanger abortions and all this. It was a lie, okay? And it was a very egregious lie because the real numbers were, instead of 1 million illegal abortions, there were about 100,000 illegal abortions, if that. I've been told numerous times even that's extremely on the high side. Now, keep in mind, he was saying 100,000 women were dying every year. Well, the real number was about 250 to 250 up to 200 to 250. And actually, I inverted the number. He was saying 5,000 to 10,000 women a year were dying. The real number was about 200 to 250. So bottom line, he said there were 1 million abortions a year. The real number was 100,000. He was saying 10,000 women a year were dying. The real number was at the most 250 women a year choosing an illegal activity which resulted in death. And then he would say 60% of Americans want abortion on demand. 60%, because they knew they had to get over the 50% number. The real statistic was only 0.5% of Americans wanted abortion on demand and get legalized. 0.5%. He repeated the lie, and then he would justify it. He would say, look, we just need to make it legal, you know, because the women who are going to do it, they're going to do it anyway. So it's why make them a criminal? Well, we all know that if you legalize something, it's going to increase the demand. Take smoking pot, for example. So they were having about 100,000 illegal abortions. He was saying 1 million. When they legalized it, it was within a couple years. They were well over 1 million abortions a year. So it became the self-fulfilling lie. And then the last part was the Catholic strategy, which was a political ploy to make sure enough Catholics in America, because they were launching this up in New York, and New York has lots and lots and lots of Catholics. So they had to implement a 4-part, what they call Catholic strategy, to ensure the Catholic voter, or at least enough of them, would continue voting for a candidate who was now considered pro-choice. They did not want the abortion issue to stop them from supporting candidates who would now shift over to the pro-choice stance. And that, my listeners, is the 8-point strategy of how and between the media, because the media picked this up, TV, radio, papers, and so people were fed a constant battery of lies, and then the Roe v. Wade decision came down the pipe.
Wow. We are about to go to break, but before we do, tell us what his warning, Dr. Bernard Nathanson's warning in his resignation letter from Nero was.
Okay, well, before I jump to that, we may need to go over his conversion. I'm not quite sure if we have enough time, but I guess we can cut off.
We have 30 seconds, yes. Maybe we can talk about, that's right, we can talk about it after break, how he converted and what his resignation letter was about.
Yeah, I cover all this in the book, which can be found on abortionking.com. What if we've been wrong?
Awesome. Awesome. Don't touch that dial. Stay with us.
I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what the world means against me. I will fight.
Welcome back. You are listening to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I am Jackee Gonzalez, your host, sitting in for Senator Chase, and my guest is Terry Beatley. Terry Beatley is the president of Hosea Initiative, a nonprofit educational organization which brings healing truth to a broken world by exploring the impact of worldviews. Terry has written a book titled What If We've Been Wrong? Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King. And that book is available at abortionking.com. Terry, before we went to break, you were talking about Dr. Nathanson's conversion, and then you were going to tell us about his warning in his resignation letter to NARAL, Pro-Choice America.
Yeah, what happened was, so he had been, once they flipped the New York law to support abortion, he began running the Western Hemisphere's largest abortion mill. They were killing about 800 to 900 little people every single week at this abortion mill. And then the Roe v. Wade decision was coming down the pike, so this was 1972. So at the end of 1972, he stops working at the abortion facility and oddly becomes the chief of obstetrics at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City the same month that the Roe v. Wade decision was handed down, which made killing babies all 9 months of pregnancy legal in America. And he celebrated that decision. He was happy that the Roe v. Wade decision had passed. And then within about 2 months, the hospital rolled in a brand new technology that he had never used before. It was new. And that happened to be real-time ultrasound, because he had seen the baby on the still, real grainy pictures, the photographs, before we got real-time. But this was real-time ultrasound. So he was now seeing the baby move and yawn and stretch and suck her thumb and wiggle her toes, and he immediately recognized the humanity of the unborn child. And so the father of America's abortion industry, he told me when I interviewed him, he said, Terry, he said, real-time ultrasound was the bomb. It made everything come alive. And so the father of the modern-day abortion industry recognized the humanity of the unborn child, and he went back to, NARAL, because he was still on the board of directors, and he basically said, look, we've got a problem here, because it's obvious now, we are taking human life. Yeah. And in my book, I use one of his quotes, but he describes NARAL as like a Stalinist, a Marxist sort of organization. The truth no longer mattered. It didn't matter to them that they were killing a human being. So within 2 years, actually on the second year anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which is on the 22nd of January, Dr. Nathanson submitted his resignation letter to the board of directors of NARAL. And in that resignation letter, which is it's actually not public, I have a copy of it. It's probably just me and one other person and the NARAL board of directors. But in that resignation letter, Dr. Nathanson warns of three things. He said, as long as this country has decriminalized abortion, we will see increased violence, increased public turmoil, and the continued disintegration of the American family unit. And that was back in January 1975, and that is indeed what has happened.
Wow. He could see it.
He could see it. Because, you think about like Chicago, Illinois, all those shootings, all the killings. It makes sense. There's probably an abortion mill, on every corner. How do you teach a young guy growing up in the inner city and not to kill when he knows full good and well you can take your girlfriend down to the corner and go kill the baby?
That's right.
We cannot take one group of people and strip them of their humanity, and then expect to keep a civil society.
Wow.
And it deeply grieved him, and so he literally spent the rest of his life trying to undo what he did. He tried to put that abortion, genie back in the bottle, and of course he died in 2011, and abortion's still legal, but America doesn't know the truth of what really happened.
Wow. America definitely needs to know the legacy of Dr. Bernard Nathanson, and I think that is a piece to the puzzle of ending the barbaric practice that has so plagued our culture today. We're about to go to break, and we will be right back. Please do not touch that dial. Welcome back. You are listening to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in, town hall, and radio show. I am Jackee Gonzalez, your host, sitting in for Senator Chase. My guest, Terry Beatley, is the president of Hosea Initiative, and she is an author. Her book is titled, What If We've Been Wrong? Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King, and it is available at abortionking.com. Please feel free to call in. Again, I'll give you that number. We would love to hear your calls, 804-454-1366. That is 804-454-1366. Well, Terry, real quick, before we went to break, you were talking about the warnings that Dr. Nathanson gave to NARAL. And moving from there, what was his parting message to you and to America?
Yeah, at the end of the interview, I felt such compassion for him, because here he was 83 years old, and it was a very heavy, I guess you'd call it a dark interview. I mean, there was nothing chipper about it, okay?
Yeah.
And I felt compassion toward him, and I said, Dr. Nathanson, if you have a message for America, if you tell me what it is, I promise you I will deliver it across our country until it becomes common knowledge, or until Roe v. Wade decision is overturned and this abortion issue, sent back to the states where it should be at. And I didn't know whether he would say yes or no, that he had a message or not, but he said yes. He said continue teaching the strategy of how he deceived our country. And then he said, tell America that the co-founder of NARAL says to love one another, abortion's not love, stop the killing. The world needs more love, and that he was all about love now. And I shook his hand, and I made him a promise that I wouldn't stop until America knew. And so that's
Wow.
that's his parting message, and it's his message, or the opening of it, love one another. Those are the words of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And so when we kind of look at what's gone wrong in our country, we're so divided. And what's one of the biggest things that's divided this country? It's over the abortion, the issue of abortion.
Yes.
And the entire, I mean, we have time to talk about it today. If we do, we should talk about the Roe v. Wade, the affidavit, Norman McCorvey's affidavit, because everything about this industry is based on lies and deception, propaganda.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to talk about that, but I tell you what, I will encourage our listeners to go to abortionking.com. I am reading your book, and it is, it's an easy read, and there is so much information. So I will encourage our listeners to go to abortionking.com and get a copy of Terry's book, What If We've Been Wrong? Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King. And you can see that Norma McCovey's affidavit is in the book. And you can see a lot of the lies that the abortion industry is based on, like Terry is saying. And real quick, before I let you go, is can you tell our listeners how you came up with the name of your book? And
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Well, yeah, we had about 20 different possible names, and that the name of the book, "What If We've Been Wrong?" actually is a question that Dr. Bernard Nathanson posed to the NARAL Board of Directors in his resignation letter, because he says, "What if we've been wrong?
Yeah.
What an incalculable injustice would have occurred." So that's where the title comes from, "Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King." And if your listeners would go to abortionking.com, they can purchase it right there, and it tells you quite a bit about the history of it right on the website there.
Yes.
So.
Wow. And finally, how can our listeners reach you if they'd like to invite you to their church or venue for a presentation?
Yes, they can email me at Terry, Terry, at hoseaforyou.org. So that's HOSEA, number 4, and then YOU.org. The website is Hosea, HOSEA, Hosea Initiative. So it's Terry at Terry at hoseaforyou.org. And so, that's probably the best way they can reach me.
Great.
We do a lot of public speaking at churches, at women's groups, at men's groups. So we go far and wide. America's going to know the truth.
Wonderful.
So thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Terry. I always enjoy my time with you, especially when we get into the weeds about the history of abortion. I learned so much, and I thank you for your dedication and for writing the book and for keeping your promise. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's get back to loving each other.
Absolutely.
Love one another. So thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having
you
me
are
on.
welcome. Thank you, Terry.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks so much.
all right. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Well, dear listeners, you have heard from Terry Beatley. She is on the stump. She is a woman of integrity. She is sharing the message. She is keeping her promise. One other thing I wanted to share with you this afternoon was something that I'm involved in at the General Assembly this session here in Richmond. It is the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, the 20-week Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act legislation that has been filed by Delegate LaRock of the 33rd District. I am working with him to pass that legislation, and we will talk a little bit about it right after the break. It is definitely in keeping with our subject today and what we've been talking about with Terry Beatley, president of Hosea Initiative. Talk to you later. Please do not go away. You are listening to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I am Jackee Gonzalez, your host, sitting in for Senator Chase. Our time is almost done, but before we wrap up, as I mentioned before the break, I am working to help pass HB 1473, also known as the 20-week Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. This legislation is fashioned to protect from abortion unborn children who are capable of feeling pain. And substantial evidence demonstrates that unborn children are capable of experiencing pain, certainly by 20 weeks after fertilization. The patron of this legislation is Delegate Dave LaRock, and Senator Chase is a Senate co-patron of this legislation. The bill has now been referred to the House Courts of Justice Committee, and I hope that you, our listeners, will call your delegate to ask them to support this life-saving and compassionate legislation. A little bit about similar legislation. In fact, the same exact bill has passed in 16 other states and the U.S. House of Representatives. And just less than 2 weeks ago, the Kentucky legislature passed this bill with bipartisan support, with 47% of their House Democrats and 36% of their Senate Democrats voting for it. So I don't see why in Virginia we should make it controversial, because it certainly should never be controversial to save lives, to protect lives, and especially where it concerns torturing little boys and little girls who actually experience excruciating pain during the procedure of abortion. And just to give you a little bit about the procedures, this painful abortion procedures that are used to kill unborn children that are capable of feeling pain, just to give you an example of one of those procedures, is called the D&E. It's dilation and evacuation, and it involves sharp-edged instruments that are used to grasp and twist and tear the baby's body into pieces. I don't even want to continue, but it is horrific what is going on in our communities, and I hope that you will call your delegate and senator and ask them to support this legislation. And finally, one other thing I wanted to give you an update on, and quite honestly celebrate, is that the House yesterday passed a resolution, H.R. 268, to designate January 22nd as the Day of Tears. And Virginians now can lower their flags in mourning for the 60 million babies that have been lost due to abortion. This resolution honors their lives and gives a day of solidarity to those who have been hurt by abortion. Thank you so much for listening. It was an absolute honor to sit in for Senator Chase today, and I hope that our conversation has encouraged you and inspired you.